Gentlemen, on behalf of the Commander and her crew, I would like to welcome you on board this high-speed service to Southampton. We have a cold crossing for you today, and in interest of your own safety and comfort, please can I ask all passengers to remain seated during the crossing.
Some pretty amazing sideways boat driving going on here.
And I would like to inform all passengers that this is no smoking service, and this includes the...
For your own safety and comfort, please listen carefully to the following safety announcement. This craft is fitted with self-inflating life rafts stowed on deck and life jackets stowed underneath your seat. To put on a life jacket, remove it from under your seat.
Sure where the toilets are in this place. I think I can see a sign. It's one danger of coming to somewhere you're not used to. Hi Fridge Geeks, Will Overton here, as promised. I've travelled, hello, we get the camera going the right way, all the way to London. We're just near Tower Bridge with Graeme Fox from REFCOM and World Refrigeration Day and a few other hats that he wears. So I'm here today, we've just done a little interview for the World Refrigeration Day and a statement for him. So we're here today to talk to Graeme about what he does, how he's involved with the industry. A lot of you see him on LinkedIn and Facebook, and now you can see he's actually real. That's it, you do have to move. So I'm going to trundle over here and get my questions. So Graeme, great to see you and thanks for having me along. Can you tell us a little bit about your background within the refrigeration, air conditioning and heat pump industry?
Okay, my background is that I worked as a field technician from when I was a young guy. Trained by my father, second generation fridge geek. First started working on small walk-in cold rooms, walk-in fridges and freezers. Progressed fairly rapidly to mainly air conditioning installations, small splits and then up to VRFs, and then back to doing some fridge work. I had my own contracting business for about 27 years. And that's how I got introduced to the industry trade bodies. Served on the HVCA refrigeration group for a long time, about 16 years. Represented the HVCA and then now became BESA on ARIA, the European Contractors Association. And I got involved with the IOR about 14 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. But mainly hands-on. I had a small family-run business, so I was very much hands-on until about 3 years ago when I put my tools down and accepted the offer of a job with the Trade Association.
So tell us a little bit about how REFCOM came about.
Okay, so the origins of REFCOM came from the Refrigeration Air Conditioning Specialist Group of the HVCA back in the mid-90s. So before F-gas regulations were even thought of in Europe, to be honest. We, as a group, as a specialist group within the HVCA, realised that there was scope for some kind of voluntary scheme so that our members could demonstrate their work to a higher standard than their competitors. So we introduced things like the engineers had to be ACRIB registered, you had to have proper training in place for your engineers and technicians. For the environmental side, you had to have an audit trail of refrigerant use, you had to keep records, waste carriers licence, all the kind of things that actually, to be fair, nowadays most people see as standard, but back then it was very much not the norm to have all of these things in hand. So we started REFCOM as the register of companies competent to handle refrigerants. That was the very mouthy tagline that went along with the REFCOM. The REFCOM itself, the name was to give it some kind of gravitas, some authority. It was at this sort of time that Ofcom and bodies like that were being set up. So that's the origin of REFCOM. As the F-gas regulations came in, we were asked by DEFRA to help them set up a company registration scheme because they didn't know how to do that. And that's how we ended up with REFCOM F-gas certification, because we had to water down the standards that we had under REFCOM. And the government mandatory stream became REFCOM F-gas certification, and the old voluntary higher standard became what is now REFCOM Elite.
So I've got quite an interesting question from John Turner that a lot of us know from the Refrigeration Engineers Facebook page. He's asked quite a poignant question, really. So he said that REFCOM have clearly got the interests of the industry at heart, which is great to see, and has been a leading voice in how we go about using F-gas. When F-gases are no more, what are your plans for REFCOM? How will it evolve, and what will its role be in the future?
It's a really interesting question, and it's something obviously we've been given a lot of thought to for a few years now. Ultimately, the future of F-gases is very limited. They will never be completely phased out. There are certain applications, well, I say never, for the foreseeable future, because there is no technology there at the moment to do some applications. So there will still be a need for it. And also, even if with the phase down states we have under F-gas at the moment, even if they went down very rapidly and people moved away from F-gases as much as possible, there will still be a huge existing stock out there that needs to be serviced. So clearly people will still need to have F-gas certification for at least 15 or 20 years. Longer term, beyond that, where are we? Well, the thing is that even though F-gases themselves might become rarer, what you tend to find with government is that once government has a register, or they have a means of having companies registered and controlled in some way, they're very reluctant to let that go. So in all honesty, I think what will probably happen is that we will probably evolve, I think the industry will probably evolve to be less an F-gas specific regulation to being refrigerant regulation. In that way, will probably become something a bit more like the gas safe is for the gas industry, for example, but it will just be strictly a company registration scheme, not necessarily linked to F-gases. And in all honesty, with the introduction of flammable refrigerants more and more, then I think the need for that kind of regulation in some way is probably going to be with us for the long term.
As an engineer, have you got your own F-gas certificate?
I do, yep.
What was your first experience of refrigeration?
Hands-on first experience was a remote farm where the farmer was building his own walk-in fridge and freezer. We converted a very old outhouse by putting sealed refrigeration doors on it and building the kit from scratch. But unfortunately, he was a very old-fashioned farmer. very typical Scottish farmer, being very frugal, and we had to build the whole thing out of very old R12 parts that were lying about in his workshops.
So when I was first introduced to the trade and as an apprentice engineer, one of the things that I was always tasked with whenever we fitted new installations was to run the drain pipework. It taught me a great number of things, actually, how pipework works in 3D instances, and how to, well, just go about what we're doing and using the tools that we need to use, drills, for example, screws, clips, all that kind of thing, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So Graeme, what was your first job as an apprentice refrigeration engineer?
I was quite good with electrics. As a youngster, I had a big interest in that side of things. My first job actually on that installation was building the control panel, wiring a completely new control panel, working out the logic. The guy was too tight to buy any proper controllers.
So what's your favourite chilled item?
My favourite chilled item's got to be beer.
So I see on your title here and there that you're an F-Inst-R, which means that you're quite high up realistically, or you just pay more money for the Institute of Refrigeration.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your role with them.
So I've been a member of the Institute for I think about 16 years or something like that. I have been a fellow for I think 7 or 8 years now. I only just recently took on a formal role with them, which is as a trustee when I was elected to the council, so thanks very much to all those members who actually voted for me.
I think I voted for you.
That's one that I know of at least.
Yeah.
Because I'm now on the council of trustees, what we try to do is have a specific role for everyone. Obviously there are some very obvious ones, president, immediate past president, treasurer. But we tried to make sure that there are trustees involved with one or more of the subcommittees, the specialist committees. And one of the things that I've always had a keen interest in is in making the IOR more relevant on a broader basis. Something that's always been thought of with the IOR is that it's very stuffy and academic. I remember sitting down with Andy Pearson when he was president at the time and having a long discussion about it, because the image of the institute was very stuffy and academic, but then when you look at the list of past presidents, they were all Dr. so-and-so or Professor so-and-so, and that's where you get the image of being stuffy and academic. One of the tasks I've got really is to try and make the institute more relevant to the AC sector. And that's, I think, bringing together the service engineer sector. Maybe
we can come and do some videoing at the Institute of Refrigeration and go and visit them and actually turn them into a thing. I know of their existence electronically and they take some money from me once a year, but it'd be great to go and have a look around the offices and see everything that they do within the industry. They produce some great papers and some free information for members and non-members alike.
There are a lot of great papers and technical bulletins and guidance that they produce, and that's by and large because there's a really good core of dedicated people, fridge geeks like ourselves, who do put in the time, and it does take a lot of time and you have a lot of personal effort in drawing technical papers together, getting peer review, getting agreement, and then getting them published. It's not something that happens overnight, and it does take an awful lot of goodwill and a lot of effort on a voluntary basis by a lot of people, basically.
What's the most unusual application, I suppose, for it?
Yeah, I think application more than place. In Dundee, my hometown, where my own business was based, we had the RRS Discovery captain, Robert Falcon Scott's ship that he took to the Antarctic expedition back in 1911, 12, something like that. That was actually built in Dundee, and when they brought the ship back to Dundee, they built this big museum to house the ship in dry dock and have a walk around exhibition of telling the story of the Antarctic expedition. One of the things they did was they brought up a huge chunk of Antarctic ice. It was about 2 foot tall by about a foot.
Wow.
And we had to build a cabinet that would maintain that lump of ice at something like minus 28 degrees or something.
Oh wow!
I think it was.
Is it still there?
So it is.
Excellent.
It is. Well, it was the last time I was in the museum. I haven't been there for several years.
Defrosted.
Yeah.
Got an accidental defrost or something.
Well, we don't maintain. My company doesn't maintain it anymore, so if it has defrosted, it's not my problem.